I'm Mikayla, Director of Strategic Partnerships for Captivate, and I'm super excited to be with Chris, our social expert, formerly head of social at Wayfair. She also led global social media for Bose for 8 years, led social at Puma. She's like a Boston dream over here. But really excited to dive into the topic today from a social lens. And then, so for Captivate, just to quickly introduce, you guys have worked with us, never heard of us. We specialize in influencer and content. And so we work with hundreds of brands, many Boston-based, Ocean Spray, Bose, Shark. Shout out to Shark, best hair dryer ever. I'm obsessed, not sponsored. But we're unique because we have the platform, we have the tech, the data, and the team of experts to help with the strategy, the execution, and measurement of influencer programs. So, ready to kick it off?
Let's do it.
Let's start with something light and fun. Chris, what are your favorite social trends at the moment?
My favorite trend at the moment when we think about how brands are interacting with social is truly the focus on community over followers. So there are other kind of fun 48-hour-ish trends, but I really feel like this trend slash movement, more focusing on community, is really important as you think about brand health in the social space. I think we've all been on social media within the last 18 months and noticed that much of what you see on your feed, whether it be your For You page or just like through suggested content on Meta, it's not through people or brands that you follow. It's through brands and people who the platforms think you might like. So while there is still an importance and somewhat of having a vanity metric of continuing to grow your follower base, we know that followers are not necessarily who are seeing your content. And of course, of your followers, that number continues to shrink in terms of who's seeing that content anyway. So what the trend is helping us move towards is building content focused on community, focused on engagement, that will be shareable, which will then get you more followers. But community is really the way into it, and I'm just so happy to see that.
In a rapidly evolving social landscape, how do brands stay ahead of this while also remaining relevant to their audience?
So it really starts with having a strong social strategy and really understanding what your goals and your objectives are in the space. The landscape is constantly evolving, so knowing kind of where you want to pivot, where you want to lean into trends is critically important. And then within them, so you have your strategy piece, and a lot of what should feed that strategy is social listening. There's a lot that can be learned about your own brand, your space overall, your competitors, and a lot that can be kind of gleaned and then adjusted accordingly. There are tons of fun examples of how social listening has brought about really fun, buzzworthy partnerships. So the Michael Sarah V example is like a really, in my opinion, like lovely, wholesome one that came about. It came about through listening, right? Through people commenting on Sarah V's pages, and then they were able to integrate not only him, but then other social influencers to really have this fun campaign story and kind of play on their brand name. So that's one piece there. And then additionally, thinking about if you want to continue to stay ahead, really thinking about competitors. Like, what are your competitors doing, and how are you continuing to benchmark that and keep an eye on that and track that in a really meaningful way? One of the things that we noticed at Wayfair was that Amazon Home, who we see as a really strong, frankly, player in the social space from a home standpoint, jumped 300,000 followers in like Q3 to Q4 of last year, which is kind of unheard of. Their content didn't demonstrably change, but their follower count shot way up, and that's not by accident, and that's not all organic. So that indicates that they're putting more paid behind their Amazon Home Social, and they're putting more emphasis there. And that is probably also an indicator that they're going to be making some bigger swings and some bigger pushes into the space. And so it's important to keep on top of what those trends are from a competitive standpoint.
Looking ahead, what do you see as the emerging trendings in social branding, and how can brands foster lasting relationships with those?
So, in thinking about social branding and how you're coming to life on social, we've heard AI a few times today. I think that there's kind of a mix of excitement slash ickiness slash like headphones don't want to always get into all of it. It's a lot, right, for marketers to think about how AI is changing the space. But I really do think this is it's a trend that we all need to embrace. And AI means like myriad things, right? Like it can be, how are you using AI to develop more photography? How are you using AI to write more copy, tell more stories, create more videos? But I actually think, and so that can be kind of one element of it. But I also think how we think about AI and creators and influencers is going to continue to grow and evolve. There was probably the most notable and known example of what's happened in that sort of space so far was kind of a flop. It was the Meta AI chatbots that they had with various, with the Kardashians, with Padma. So it didn't perform well, but I do think that that's just kind of a first step into like how are creators and influencers and talent going to come to life, and then how, on the flip side of that, what does that mean for the creators and the influencers and the talent? Like how are, like there's a whole new world of how that's going to change and evolve in terms of how you work with those folks in the space. So like it or not, I think it's something that needs to be embraced. There will definitely be some AI movements that are much more tactical, functional, and then there's the other like kind of more flashy, tentpole moment type of executions that are more built around newsworthiness versus necessity or kind of longevity of the content.
Yeah, and just to go off of that more from my content lens, a brand that we're seeing, actually crushing it right now and is really taking advantage of this emerging trend is brands are becoming content houses. Elf Cosmetics, I'm sure you guys have heard of Elf. If you don't follow them on LinkedIn, on social, follow them. They are absolutely crushing it when it comes to content. They just released a docu-series about 15 minutes long. It went on teasers on social, it went on Amazon Freebie, and it actually opened up in theaters across the US for Mean Girls. And this is the lengthiest branded content to ever go beyond social. And why that's so cool is because thinking about brands becoming content houses, this was a cinematographer actually produced this. And when you think about brands using content, think about this play, now we're thinking of a new strategy, a new hiring strategy, thinking about storytellers, producers, filmmakers in that C-suite spot to really drive these content plays. And so from something that large to also influencers, there's so many ways brands are taking this to the next level. Next question, how can brands strike a balance between maintaining their traditional identity and embracing social innovations to stay relevant to both existing and new customers? We'd love if you have any of those examples that you can share too.
Yeah, so in terms of kind of maintaining while branching into new, it really comes down to like what is your strategy at the core, and when building out your strategy, how are you accounting for changing trends? How are you accounting for the time it's going to take? It's not just about kind of placeholders in a calendar, but it's about also allotting your team the time and the space to think about and create off of these trends. A lot of them, if you think about cultural moments, those are ones you can kind of be like, well, there might be something around the Super Bowl, right? Maybe that's a notable moment. And like, how can we lean in? You can do some brainstorming ahead of time, but you can really only plan so much. But I think planning, knowing how much energy and time and effort you want to put into a potential trend is key to have allotted into the strategy itself. An example from when I was at Bose was this transformation of really leaning into the heritage of being a tech first, best tech company to being more lifestyle. And that doesn't mean that there was technically a tech trade-off. It just means that we're listening to our customers, and the tech story wasn't as enticing or exciting or as important as, do these earbuds look cool and when I walk down the street, or whatever, answer, whatever you want them to look like. But it's important to kind of balance that. And so the strategy shifted. And on social, it was a big change. We were talking to different people because the person who is tech first is maybe different, not necessarily, but maybe different from the person who's lifestyle first. So how do you kind of balance that? And it's important to have, again, clear strategy, clear goals and objectives as you're working to execute against that work.
So, with social platforms having, the ability to have direct interactions with their followers, with new and existing audiences, how can brands leverage this more to have more of a customer-centric approach?
So I think kind of going back to the idea of the importance of community, like social is supposed to be social. Social is supposed to get comments and interactions and shares. And the more brands can lean into the capabilities that are allotted to them of interacting with customers, the better. And the chances of just, or the opportunities to just show off brand persona, whether in your brand style and tone is not just on your own content, but it's like, how are you showing up on other brands' content, trending content, relevant story content, even if it doesn't have anything to do with your brand specifically. So just showing that authenticity of who you are as a brand and really taking advantage of that is one thing. And then in thinking about losing the second half of the question.
Just more of like fostering lasting loyalty.
Yes, and like listening as well, and understanding where you can identify these conversations, and thinking about the transparency that's also required to really gain the trust of this community and these folks that you've kind of brought in. How are you remaining transparent and authentic? How are you working with partners that make total sense for your brand? How are you working with influencers on more than a one-off basis? How are you thinking about relationships? How are you thinking about how you're showing up and supporting those influencers after their post or their work is done with you, and just having that kind of authentic way as if you were just like a regular person being social on social media.
I love it. When you're talking about brands and working with influencers and having that more a trust in them, also translating to the trust that we as followers who follow your favorite creators who work with brands, something that's very exciting you guys get firsthand access to is this week we're launching creator storefronts with one of the most iconic sneaker brands. That's all I can say. But you'll see it go live this week, and so we're piloting creator storefronts because the path to purchase is broken, and how can we fix it? How can we make it more seamless? And how can we let our creators curate a shopping experience with their favorite products, capsule collections? I want to buy something in 2 steps, and this is what we made. And so you guys will probably see it, but this is really interesting thing about that more full funnel approach, having that transparency, having that trust with creators, letting creators create, and also when everyone sells product, services, everyone's happy at the end of the day. So
I love that. I think that I'm excited for that that capability to roll out. I think to your point, it does just kind of help continues the funnel, right? And it allows for the authenticity. It also gives the influencer or the creator or the talent more stake in the game overall, and more willingness to want to partner with you, as much as they're lending your name. The inverse is happening as well, so I love that.
How are we doing for time right now? Time check, Chris. How are we doing?
We have 10 minutes.
Okay, we got 10 minutes. Let's see. I think want to talk a little bit about, there's so much information out there. There's so many do this, don't do that. This is too risky. You're not taking enough of a risk. How are we creating more crafted content strategies? Like what goes into that? You talk about social listening, but we'd love, some examples of how you leverage social listening or anything like that.
Yeah, I think in terms of the importance of having a clear content strategy is it's paramount. You need to know what the content, what your objectives are, and then the content that's going to get you there, and being really clear and formulaic about how that gets created and kind of how do you weigh the different types of content. So at Wayfair, we think a lot about cultural trend content should be a certain percentage of the calendar, right? Promotional content should be a certain percentage of the calendar, UGC, etc. So how do you kind of have those guardrails and continue to build content for it? But at the same time, how are you also ensuring through listening, through analyzing the data and ongoing metrics, how are you ensuring that that's still right? Just because it was right 6 months ago doesn't mean it's right now. One example is when we think about video duration times across platforms, that's actually drastically changed even in the last 6 months. So now, whereas longer form videos on TikTok are oftentimes outperforming shorter, it used to be the inverse. Also, just the speed. When you think about a lot of the video content you might watch on Instagram, the current rate is much faster than it was 6 months ago. So if you think about a how-to video, 6 months ago, my feedback to our creative team was show me all the steps, make sure I can read it, which as a human, I still think we should be able to read everything before it flies off the screen. But trends and what's performing is that faster content and the content where you do have to watch it twice. So it's important to kind of balance that and what's your strategy versus always being aware and open and actually encouraging, pushing on that and then making the changes needed.
And to go off the social listening, that's part of everything we've built at Captivate. We've been around for 9 years, and that's when we talk to brands like Bose or Wayfair, right? We start with social listening, and what we're starting to do more this year that a lot of our brand partners are so excited about because we've seen such success last year is these creator boards. So rather than us, we can only tell you so much that's going to work until we test it out, but we actually have dedicated creators for our clients that we bring in them into the planning conversations. And so we talk about looking at social listening, we look at strategy. We worked with Verizon and Disney Unlimited on a campaign, and one of the creators, she said, to promote the services, right? It's the most exciting idea, but how do we bring this to life on TikTok? And she was like, I'm going to make a 40-foot long wig. All right. To promote Disney Plus services? Okay, we see where this is going. And she created this wig, and it went viral. And we saw not only did it go viral, all the engagement, but actually seeing down to the lower funnel who actually signed up for this promotion. So it was really awesome to let creators create, use that social listening, use our team of experts, and watch this come to life. And so creator boards are definitely something that we think are going to help with the well-crafted content strategy this year. All right, I'm going to skip some because I want us to really have questions. Let's wrap it up with what advice would you give brands this year in terms of leveraging social to stay relevant and also have that lasting loyalty with new and existing audiences?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, the knowing and acknowledging the importance for speed is big, and also really understanding your core audience. Even if you're technically mass market, you shouldn't talk to our customers like they're all the same. They aren't. And by forcing a lot of your content, especially in social, to be truly mass market, kind of like vanilla. It's fine for a lot of people, but it's not built for any one group, and therefore it's not really built for anyone. So really thinking about who is the core target audience that you're trying to reach. And frankly, on social, it's likely a little bit different per platform, and that's okay, and that's probably good, right? Because those are the habits of folks on different platforms are different. So really keeping your audience at the core, and really understanding behaviors across, and not being vanilla and taking big risks.
Don't be vanilla,
Don't be
folks.
vanilla. I do love vanilla, but not on content.
TikTok would love what you're saying. You guys haven't downloaded the TikTok What's Next 2024 try to forecast. It's like basically everything that you're told to do, stop doing it and flip it on its head. The year of creativity, bravery, like whatever you're doing everywhere else, you can't do it on social. So really switch it up this year. Thank you for all those wonderful ideas and thoughts. All right. Thank you guys.